We're bringing it to you live once again from the city of Oaks, the Tar Heel State. As I'm your host, aka Seven Smalls, the culture clinician. Now listen, in this show, we're going to be interviewing the distinguished author and personal trainer, Mark Plaisir. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. And from this show and the expose in his book, we're going to be looking at the intricacies and the dynamics of why modern relationships are in such a state of flux. And we're going to look at how trauma, legacy burdens, and even some of the impacts and the ravages of slavery has caused some of our women to be strong, some of our men to be defeated, and more or less how all of these variables come into play into having the mess that we have in the States, or the mess that we have in current America. Now listen, there was a time when relationships were very sustainable. Men knew their roles, women knew their roles, and they came together to form strong, vibrant communities. Now listen, Mark is from Haiti, a place where cultures are more or less very traditional. And Mark more or less can exemplify a time that he saw those strong cultures in his country that he doesn't see currently in America. From this show, we're going to have a collaboration, and we're going to talk about the nuances of relationships. We're going to talk about the psychology behind relationships, and we're going to talk about how all those things play a role to this current mess that we have now. So I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy this show. And I want you to remember this: if it ain't seven, it ain't kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. I believe Mark got something for you on this show, and I think it's going to help you if you're willing to take it in and to more or less explore the dynamics of why we're in the current state that we are in now. I want you to enjoy this. All right. Mark Plaisir. I hope I said it right. Don't slap me. Don't give me a French slap. But I hope I said it right. Mark Plaisir. But anyway, I'm close. So how you doing, brother? What's going on? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? All right, Mark. Mark, my man. Listen, I've been studying you, man. Yeah.
Montezier. That's close enough. That's close enough.
Okay, I'm close enough.
I'm doing great. How you feeling, man? Thanks for having me.
I'm honored to have you, man. I found out about you through a colleague of mine.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hold on. Can you hear me? Hello? I can hear you. Can you hear me? You can hear me?
There's a lagging.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway, I don't know what the lag is about, but introduce yourself.
I can hear you, but there's a lag.
Okay. Introduce yourself and tell the audience who you are.
I can hear you, but there's a lag. But it's
okay. All right. Okay. So just introduce yourself and tell the audience who you are. I'm gonna work on it. Hold tight.
All right. So I am Mark Plaisir. I am the author of a new book, Strong Women, Fed Up Men, Defeated Sons, Broken Daughters, Healing Generational Pain. I have been working with clients for over 15 years on a physical and emotional level. And I am a patient care manager, and I am also doing a master's degree in organizational psychology. And that's pretty much who I am, what I do, and I'm happy to be here, and hopefully we have a great conversation, and a lot of great discussions about very important topics, and I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, sir. So what did you see in America, Mark, that more or less, I'm not going to say force, but encourage you to write this book at such a time as this? What are the strains that you've seen in modern relationships that's caused the psychopathology, Mark, that we see as we speak?
I think that there's been a really bad breakdown in relationships, and I'm not saying it's a current thing. I think it's always been around ever since, based on what I talked about in the book. A lot of the traditions that we were taught during slavery And a lot of them are still driving us, in the ways that we interact with each other, the ways that we love each other, not being able to have relationships the way we wanted to have them. And, watching each other going through such horrible times and pain and not being able to help one another, I think that created a lot of resentments between us. And because of that, we don't really know how to interact with each other now, right? We don't really understand who we are as men and women, right? Our roles as men and women to one another. And because of all those things and the pain that we accumulated throughout the years, just create that friction between us and kind of break down the sanctified bond that we should have had, with one another.
Now, listen, some will argue, Mark, that there was so we do believe that slavery shaped some of the dysfunction that we have.
Absolutely.
But we don't believe the slavery in itself is the more or less the antithesis to the current behaviors that we see in relationships, because and I know that in America, relationships were more intact during slavery.
Right.
They were a lot more intact, and community, family, and hope were a lot better. But something happened around 1965 that caused a chasm in modern relationships. Yeah. And we haven't recovered since then. So I want you to talk about the chasm that was more or less inspired by aggressive feminist policies. But also I want you to talk about how you feel that even in an intact relationship during slavery, it impacted some of the negative strains that we have now.
Well, I think, I'll take it back, before I answer the question. We have to understand the impact, right, of everything that had happened in the past. And a lot of the hurt that we went through, our ancestors went through, there was no healing for that. Right. So at some point we ended, it caught up. Right. A lot of the pain, caught up. And the way now, you talk about feminism, there are a lot of distractions, right, between men and women, right? The values are different. You know what I mean? Like the things that we used to fight for before, we're not fighting for those things anymore because our values are different now. You know what I'm saying? And because a lot of it have to do with we're more about being financially stable. Instead of being emotionally stable, you know what I mean? Psychologically stable. And because of all those distractions, because of, not having, family values anymore, you know what I'm saying? Not having, both parents together anymore, that creates a lot of confusion for children. And we have those children growing up, not understanding and not knowing what it is to have a healthy family dynamic. And when you see that, when you grow up in that, there's no way you're really going to understand how to have healthy relationships. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So specifically, as you extrapolate the ravages of slavery, can you pinpoint, because there is a condition called post-traumatic slavery disorder, which is a byproduct of aversive policies of the past. But I want you to highlight in your book, Mark, what key elements you wrote in the book, and I want you to tell the audience the name of your book so they can go and purchase it.
Absolutely. So the name of the book is Strong Women, Fed Up Men, Defeated Sons and Broken Daughters, Healing Generational Pain. So the correlation between slavery and, relationships and us Black folks, we went through a really, really dark time, right? So imagine if you grow up with, parents who were, just unhealthy emotionally. Right. They raised you. They abused you. Like those things don't just disappear. Right. They stay with you. You know what I mean? So imagine going through, over, 400 years of slavery. Right. And not having to even understand what happened. Right. Because our ancestors didn't have emotional healing. Right. That wasn't a thing. Right. They were expected to be just products and properties of their masters. You know what I'm saying? So you're not just gonna wake up one day and be emotionally healthy. You're not just gonna wake up one day and say, you have it all figured out when you weren't even a human being.
Right.
To your masters. So not being able to have healthy relationships from the start. So now we're trying to have those relationships, right? We're more concerned about love now. You know what I mean? Because, well, we know that it's important, but because we don't know how to have it, it becomes a problem, right? I mean, when love is not even the problem, because we're hurting, because a lot of us, are carrying a lot of detrimental ways from the way our parents raised us, right? Because of the way their parents raised them. You know what I'm saying? So now we're creating, chaos in relationships. And because of that, it's part of, slavery that created those traditions and patterns that we're following today, and not knowing how to break them because we don't understand where they're coming from. You know what I mean?
So when you say traditions and patterns, what, from your anecdotal experience, what would you say are the traditions and patterns that you've seen? Tell me more specifically what you mean by that.
Well, let's think about, when we talk about generational curses, right? They're not really curses, they're pain. You know what I mean? So a lot of it is, your parents, grew up, having dysfunctions in their families, right? They didn't talk to each other.
Right.
They were always bickering with each other. So those things end up being passed down to their children, right? Who have no idea what a lot of those feuds are about. But because they're familiar, they're parental, so they continue to have those feuds. They continue to have, those same detrimental ways, and not understanding the impact that they have on their, psychological health.
Right. Right. You started the title of your book by saying strong women. And I've always said that, a woman's greatest asset as it relates to strength is her ability to be feminine. But I always said that the whole concept behind being strong and independent is, in my mind, it's a deficit mindset built out of pain, built out of brokenness, and also built out of slavery. Because in the essence of interdependence, men and women work together better as a team.
Right.
What's your take on that?
So, well, exactly what you said. That's the breakdown in the book. When you look at, women, even from slavery, they were expected to be strong, right? Because they weren't seen as human, right? So when you have a kid, when you have children, they took them from you, right? You have to be strong, right? When you being forced to be impregnated by your own, children, you have to be strong. You know what I mean? And those things were things that were happening during slavery. You know what I mean? And then, move forward to, the 60s when in our communities, and, kids were being shot by their own, brothers and sisters, right? Black boys and black girls. There was a lot of violence because of gangs and being in the hood or whatnot. So a lot of mothers were in pain because of that. And those pain, actually force women to be strong, right? You don't get strong because you choose to be strong.
Right.
You become strong because of everything that you have to go through.
Right.
Because if you don't have that strength, then, you're going to crumble.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So being strong is not necessarily a bad thing, but the way I talk about it in the book, being strong doesn't help you heal. It doesn't help you have healthy relationships. You know what I mean? And when someone expects you to be strong, it's because they expect you to put up with a lot of things that they're going to put you through, right? It's because they expect you to be strong so they can exploit your strength or your vulnerability,
right?
You know what I mean? And still expect you to be around. You know what I'm saying? But they don't expect you to be strong just to be loving. You know what I mean? So your strength is benefiting other people, but yourself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. And the reason why I say it's a deficit mindset, because you talk about Gen X women and they talk about being strong and independent, but that came out of seeing their moms not have the covering and the love and the protection of their husbands. And some of that was due to aversive policies. But I think women now choose to be that. And I think that's a negative choice. You don't have to be in that negative mindset now because it's counterproductive. Men by nature are doers. And so men are like Petra. The word Petra in the Greek means rock. So in a man's mindset, he wants to be the rock in the relationship so that you can build on and operate in your feminine essence. But I think a lot of times, Mark, a lot of women, they've taken on that negative, what I call that thinking error of magnification, where they magnify their importance and they minimize the importance of a man. And because of that, the chasm in relationships have actually getting wider and wider and wider, because a woman's greatest asset is not the polarity as it relates to being strong, but it's actually being soft and self-sufficient so that she can be interdependent with her man. Men and women were optimized to be synchronized. And when they are optimized to be synchronized, they work together as a team, and we have vibrant, productive, healthy communities. So you're correct. Even though we were broken, and even though we were intact and slave and our families were together and we got married, we still learned a lot of negative thinking patterns that has more or less impacted us in a negative way now. So I want you to elaborate on that.
Yeah. So, let's touch base about, women choosing to be strong. When you look at, the dynamic of relationships, right? As a girl, you look at your parents, you look at your mom, whatever she's going through, you're learning from that. You know what I mean? And you're learning to not be your mother. You're learning to not go through what she's going through. And those things, they don't help a girl, to be soft, right?
Right.
They're making you strong. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so when you end up getting older, you didn't really witness a healthy family pattern, right? Healthy relationships. So you end up, choosing, boys or men who are pretty much the same way as what you grew up in. You know what I mean? And because of that, you keep getting hurt. And at some point, you just rely on that strength, because that's pretty much the only thing you have. You know what I'm saying? And because of that, you will continue to be hurt because of that strength. Because so what I've noticed, even working with people, with clients, just the mindset of not just women, just men and women, boys and girls, just having the mindset where you always feel like you have to protect yourself, is hurtful in itself. You know what I mean? Because you're walking around guarded.
Right.
You're walking around hurting, protecting the pain that you have accumulated from your childhood, from your parents, from experiences. So a lot of those things, force women to be strong, and not understanding that, well, because I'm so used to being strong, if I'm not strong anymore, then people are gonna hurt me. Right.
I see your point.
Not understanding that, well, that strength is actually causing people to hurt you, because let's say if you're confrontational, right, you're always going to put yourself in situations to be, confrontational with other people, right? The mindset is going to force you to be in situations that are going to force you to always have to defend yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean? So being strong, again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Strength is not necessarily a bad thing to have, but being strong where you feel like you always have to defend yourself, you always have to, be in positions that are gonna, not hurt you, when in fact you're walking around hurting, it doesn't help you. You know what I mean?
And so it sounds like to me, this whole narrative of being strong is an ego defense mechanism. It's an ego defense mechanism where they're trying to protect themselves instead of operating in that natural essence, which is being feminine. And see, in our cultures, Mark, being feminine and soft is seen as a negative, which in essence, being soft and feminine actually is a woman's virtue, because the masculine actually coalesces with the feminine. The masculine repels the masculine repels the masculine, just like with men. If you come to men masculine, and they're disrespectful, then we might get aggressive. But if you come to a man in respect, then we'll calm ourselves down. No more than when a woman comes to a man. When a woman comes to a man being feminine and soft, that's her strength. Her strength is her femininity, but because of the ravages of slavery, the ravages of brokenness, the ravages of negative learned behavior, that whole concept of strong is, like you say, it's an ego defense mechanism. instead of being a coping strategy for men and women to come together, because there's no such thing as being independent. That's a thinking error. There's no such thing as being independent. No man is 100% independent but the creator. Only God is independent. But human beings can be self-sufficient.
Right.
And human beings can a woman can say, I'm going to be soft and self-sufficient until I can become interdependent. Because we're better when we're interdependent instead of being what's called independent. So I want you to continue to highlight that.
Absolutely. Yeah. When people talk about, I'm independent, it's a defense mechanism. It's a way to say, well, I'm not relying on other people to not be disappointed. Right. Mm-hmm. So, if you see yourself as independent, then, you don't really need anything from other people. But, you actually hurting yourself because, no man is an island. Right. Mm-hmm. So if you see yourself as doing everything for yourself, doing everything by yourself, when in fact it really doesn't work that way, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. You're destroying your resources. You're pretty much hurting yourself in the process, not understanding that, you're doing it to yourself. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it goes the same when people say I'm a self-made millionaire. There's no such thing. Right. There's no self-made anything. You can work on yourself to improve yourself. But even with that, you still need a support system. You know what I mean? So I think when people say, well, I don't need anybody, right? It's because we don't understand the importance of needing, right? We value wanting more than needing. And because we feel like if I say I need someone or I need something, then it makes me feel needy. You know what I mean? Because again, we depreciate the value of needing one another and appreciate the value of wanting other people because we can manipulate what we want, right? And if we want it, we can buy it. We can pay for it. It's ours. We can own it. You know what I'm saying? So I think understanding that, the value of what we bring to each other, right? Understanding, what we mean to each other, what we were supposed to be to one another, right? Because I feel like a lot of us are not being taught that. And because of that, we're continually, hurting ourselves. We're continually just moving and, putting ourselves in relationships that are broken, right? That are hurtful, that are just detrimental to ourselves because we don't understand, well, this is what I'm supposed to be to you, for you, and this is what you're supposed to be to me and for me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna see if I can get a young lady. She's an IFS trainer. It's called Internal Family Systems, and it talks about the impact of what's called legacy burdens. And so, legacy burdens, more or less, are the burdens of generational curses that people haven't dealt with in a sufficient manner. And because of those legacy burdens, we continue to have the psychopathology of brokenness that continues to permeate in our cultures, where men and women don't respect one another, or women don't understand the importance of adhering and respecting their men. Mark, I want to go back in time. You're from Haiti. Your roots go back to Haiti. What do you see in the Haitian culture that's not as dysfunctional that you see in the American culture?
That's a good question.
Right.
When I was growing up in Haiti, I came here when I was 17. It was different, right? We valued people, right? The way we understood relationship was that the man would well, I was a boy back then, so the boy would chase the girl and do all these sweet and kind things, and it would feel great. And watching older people, again, because of that those same unhealthy patterns, there were unhealthy relationships, you know what I mean? But it was different in the sense that people needed people, and they understood that. And because of that, they also understood the roles that they played in each other's lives, right? So the difference with here, people are very independent, and because of that independence, people are actually hurting a lot more because they draining themselves, they're quick to create, unhealthy relationships because, they don't understand, like, we don't understand each other. We don't understand like what we're supposed to be for one another. You know what I mean? And because of that, we keep creating again unhealthy patterns, unhealthy behaviors, and expect other people to just put up with them. When in reality, no one has to put up with anything because no one owes you anything, right? It's your responsibility to to heal yourself, to work on yourself, and then get with somebody else and create a healthy healthy relationship. And that goes for either Haiti or here.
Hey, I want to interject. So I think that we're combining two different time periods. Like there are two different sets of issues that stand in our way, and I want to distinguish those. I mean, you're touching on all of them, but I want to create a clear line between them. So you have, post-slavery, and then you have the creation of the welfare state and feminism. So if you look at post-slavery, over 80% of Black people were married, and we stayed. We were married at a higher percentage than white people, and we stayed married longer than white people. So as bad as slavery was, and I'm sure to Mark's point, there were plenty of dysfunctional relationships and things like that coming out of slavery. The fact of the matter still is that we were able to create families. We were able to create things like Black Wall Street, Rosewood. We had business owners, we had schools. Like we were on our way to creating our own wealth within our communities, just like so many immigrants have come over and done also. The thing that we haven't been able to hurdle is social welfare and feminism. Social welfare replaced the man, and I'm old enough to have seen women put their men out because they knew that they could get money, and then they dated freely who they wanted. I remember going to a dinner party with my parents, and even back then, there were a lot of families were together. Like if you went to a dinner party, it was nothing but couples, bro. It wasn't a bunch of single men and women around. It was couples. And this one woman who was babysitting us, she kicked her man out. And then when she was babysitting us, she would have different guys coming by to see her when she was baby. You know what I'm saying? So she was autonomous because she just got on welfare. You have another kid, you get more welfare. Feminism, you don't need a man. You're strong and independent. Those are the things. If you look at it from a time perspective, we've struggled much more overcoming feminism and social welfare than we did slavery. Much more. We're married at a 25% rate. We were married at an 80% rate. Out of wedlock births were not out of control. They are now. Abortion was illegal back then, so that's a non-issue. But you know what I'm saying? We built wealth within our communities. We have businesses within our communities. Now our idea of success is to go move to a white community once we get money.
Right.
Our idea of success is to get a job, not to create a business in the environment. So the social welfare, we really got to look hard at the social welfare and the feminism, because we have struggled more to recover from those policies than we have from slavery.
Yeah, definitely. I also talk about that in the book too, Gene. I talk about, in the 60s when, the whole welfare and if you had a man in the house, and you wanted to be qualified to receive that, that money, you had to get rid of the men, right? And exactly. So a lot of kids grew up not having fathers around, and because those men they couldn't get a job, right? So they ended up getting arrested and go to prison. So that created a whole generation of lost and defeated boys watching the men who were supposed to be their role models. But I also think that when we talk about the 50s and the 40s post-slavery, we had reasons to be together, right? Like, those people had reasons to be together because, not that we don't have reasons now, but the values were different. But what happened, though, I remember watching my grandparents, because I grew up with my grandparents. They didn't really have a healthy relationship, but they stay together, right?
Well, you didn't have social programs that would help the woman leave the man.
Right. So what happened, though, you end up having a lot of children growing up watching that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because let's talk about post-slavery. We still didn't really know how to have healthy relationships.
Right.
Because we were still broken from slavery.
Right.
You know what I mean? So now, when you come from that, right? Okay, well, you wanted to be together. You couldn't really have the open relationship that you wanted to have. So now that you get to have it, right, you have a lot of just valuable things to fight for. So now, when you end up having the relationship, not knowing how to really love one another because of all the brokenness, right, because of all the pain, because you watch your sons, as the man, but you watch your sons working alongside you, right, beaten. You couldn't defend your son. You watch your daughters getting, sexually abused. You couldn't, protect your daughters, right? So a lot of those things create hurt. So now, when you end up getting in that relationship with that Black woman or the Black man, so there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of brokenness, right? So a lot of those things end up manifesting, projecting onto to the children. So now those children grow up hurting, right? So and when the feminist movement, come into play, it's like, well, now, as a woman, you can actually do whatever you want. And even in the 40s, when if I'm not mistaken, a French poet, came up with the romance construct, right? With that social construct, it was no longer about love. It was about pretty much just, what, you don't really need to get married. You can just, leave your husband or leave your wife and just have a fling. And that was the romance. So now, having this misunderstanding, so and people start, just they started confusing, a real relationship and love for, what felt good. Not necessarily what made sense or what they needed, but basically what felt good. You know what I mean? And because of that, when the feminist movement came along, a lot of women couldn't wait to become independent.
Right.
Because now they had a voice, right? Now society was saying, well, you can do your own thing now. You don't need a man. But what we didn't realize, the Western culture was never really for us, right? Western civilization was never really, for us. You know what I mean? So we ended up getting lost in translation. We ended up hurting ourselves even more, because the same people who were telling us, well, this is what you should do, but they're profiting from us, right? On us, right? They're benefiting from our brokenness. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of us don't understand that. So we ended up falling in that trap and end up getting more, broken. Children end up, raising themselves and going to prison. You know what I mean? So that just created a lot more dysfunction in our communities. And now, that we hear, again, because of all the pain back from slavery, from the social welfare time. So now we just don't even know how to get back to, being, healthy for one another. You know what I mean?
Right. So it sounds like to me that even though we were intact, and Gene brought some very, very great points up, but even though in our intactness, there still was some learned negative thinking patterns in that brokenness. Yeah, we were intact, but we were functional, but we were still broken in our functionality. That's what you're saying, more or less. And so, I did a show called Empowered to be Depowered. And what I was basically trying to say is that now, a lot of our women are, educated, they're doing well, but at the same time, a lot of them are hurt because, a woman from Cosmopolitan magazine said that she sold a lot of our women a lie. They believed that being, independent was the greatest essence of success, but the greatest essence of success really is family and working together as a team. But see, the thing that I see, and me and Gina talked about this in private, you know, a lot of our modern women want what I call taxation without representation. You know, they want the benefits of being in a traditional marriage and a traditional relationship, but they still want to be modern. What's your take on that, Mark?
Everybody wants to be loved, right?
Right.
Everybody wants to have a relationship. Whether they say I'm independent, you know, I don't need someone. Everybody wants to have.
Excuse me, Mark. In the interest of full disclosure, me and Mark have also had these conversations.
Absolutely. But because of the brokenness, because of the hurt, right? Because again, a lot of people grow up, seeing what they don't want. So when they get older, they don't really know how to have something that they want, right? So they end up building what they don't want, and then say, you know what, that's really not working for me, right? So, and because of that, you kind of build this, this wall around yourself, and saying, well, I'm an independent person. I don't need anybody. But deep down inside, you're lonely, right? You're hurting,
right.
You know what I mean? So, but to put up faces, you keep saying you don't need somebody, but in reality, that's not what it is. I think it's again, until all of us, men and women, we get to the point where we can be honest with ourselves and focus on, healing whatever it is that we're going through, whatever it is that, our perception on relationship, our perception on love, until we take a look at those things, we're never really going to have healthy relationship. Because at the end of the day, it's not somebody else. A lot of the pain that we're going through, they have nothing with the person that we end up getting with. You know what I mean? So we have to be honest with ourselves and heal ourselves in order to not choose the broken person, right? Work on ourselves in order to not get with somebody who's going to hurt us even more. You know what I mean? Because people are going to be who they are until they, become honest with themselves and work on themselves. Because when somebody's broken, I have this analogy, when somebody's empty, right? And you have three levels of emptiness, right? So first you have the person who, I may be low right now on some things, right? But I know how to give them back to myself, right? And then you have the person who's completely empty, right? Who's looking for other people to fill that void, to fill the emptiness. Now you can give that person as much as you want, but they're gonna deplete you completely, because there's no way you can fill their void. That's their job.
That is true.
Then you have the other person, like of emptiness, where that person just don't have that receptor at all. They just don't have it to hold whatever it is that you're giving them. So you can spend all your life, you can commit yourself to giving to that person. They'll keep looking, from everybody to get in order to fill the void, but they're not going to be able to fill it because they don't even have that receptor to hold anything that you're giving to them. You know what I mean? So I think it's up to everyone to understand, well, you know what, you don't have to say, I'm independent, I don't need somebody, because that doesn't make sense, right? You have to be honest with yourself and work on yourself, become the healthiest version of you in order to have a healthy relationship, in order to have, to attract healthy people. You know what I'm saying?
Why are men fed up? You said strong women and fed up men.
Yeah.
Because you got a what I call a Haitian gumbo with that book. You got all kinds of flavors in that book, man. So you got strong women, you got fed up men. Let me see. Hold on. Fed up men, defeated sons, and broken daughters. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot going on. That's a lot. So why are men fed up, Mark? Why are men?
So here's the thing.
Yes,
one thing leads to another, right? When you have defeated sons and you have broken daughters, they get that way because of their childhood, right? Because of a lot of expectations they couldn't meet. Because of, so a lot of sons. Let's talk about the defeated sons, and then we'll get to fed up men. A lot of sons grow up, having to be the man of the house. right? Because a lot of, Black boys, they're raised by their moms,
Right.
right? And it doesn't matter for a lot of them, even if their dad is around, the mom is the one doing the raising. You know what I mean? And because of that, naturally, a lot of boys understand that, you know what? This is not my mom's job. It should be my dad's job, right? To do certain things. So when the dad is not doing that, so they feel like it's their job to start doing it, right? If they feel like their mom is not being loved properly by their dads, they feel like, well, I have to love my mom, right? The way my dad was supposed to love my mom. Or if my mom is complaining about, not getting what she needs from my dad, then I have to be that to my mom. You know what I'm saying? But not understanding, it's not the kid's job. It's not the son's job.
Right. It's not.
Right. So they end up getting defeated because they can't meet those expectations.
I see. Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. And when you tell a boy, well, man up, he's a boy. He doesn't have to man up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And Mark, that's a clinical term called adultification.
Right.
It's called adultification. It's the adultified child, or what we call the son husband.
Right.
So when they take on the roles that were really never supposed to been, that they were never supposed to take on,
right,
and which in essence caused them to learn negative patterns and negative thinking traits in their relationships, where they have unfulfilled outcomes,
right,
because they were so busy trying to facilitate brokenness instead of having the opportunity to live.
Exactly. Yeah. So they never really learned how to be a boy, right? They never learned how to be boys. So they end up being men at such a young age, right? And that just creates a lot of defeats in the boy, right?
And not even really men, but like what they think a man is.
Right. I mean, they don't know what it means to be a man, right? Exactly. And oftentimes they have their friends teaching them, how to be men.
Or hip hop.
Right.
A lot of young Black men learn their idea of masculinity comes directly from hip hop.
Yes, absolutely. And those are just pure dysfunctions, right? That has nothing, the flashy things, the wealth, whatever it is, that have nothing to do with being a man, right? Mm-hmm. So now, moving on from all those, negative patterns and learnings and teachings and traditions. Now and again, let's talk about, if, growing up with that mother, right? Let's say you grew up with a mother who was always nagging, right? Let's say, as a son, you grew up with a mother who even beats you up, right? So now you end up having all these negative things. And when you end up getting into a relationship with a woman, now it's like, well, by this point, I'm fed up, because the woman is going to have her own expectations of you, right? She's going to want you to be a different type of man that, from what you were taught or what you learned as a child. You know what I'm saying? So now it's like, well, by that time, I'm fed up. You know what I mean? When you start talking in my ears, or you telling me to be this other person that I was never taught to be, you know what I mean? And oftentimes it's gonna come from a woman or a girl who never really taught how to be a girl or a woman. You know what I'm saying? So now it's like, well, I don't know what you're asking me to be. I'm not that person. I can't be that person. I was never taught to be that person. So a lot of men end up being fed up, by the time they become adults, and not, because again, they were never really taught how to be men. So that's where the fed up men comes from. It's all built up from their childhood. It's a process.
It's what I call the Pinocchio effect. Pinocchio go around and say, "I'll never be a real boy," because he's too busy being a puppet on strings.
Right.
That's an epiphany that I got. He's too busy being a puppet on strings.
Yeah.
Men and boys are fed up, and and like I said, Mark, you're from your roots go back to the free country of Haiti. How are Haitian women different than American women in their treatment of their men? Do you think you see them more? You got permission to keep it real. He's being slow. He said, I don't want to touch that one, but
I'm very familiar with this one myself. Go ahead.
Right. But no, I'm just being honest. I mean, What is that? How do Haitian women treat their men compared to American women? Is there a high level of respect for their men, in your opinion?
Absolutely. I definitely think that there's a lot more respect. You know, in Haiti, not necessarily, here, but let me take that back. Depending on the generation.
Yeah, the older generations, there's a lot of respect.
Right. And I think, I think, in Haiti, because women don't have that mindset of being independent, right? Because the thing is, when I think it's the issue is the fact that you feel like you don't need someone, right? When you feel like you don't need others, you have no need for others, right? The way you act towards others, can be very, disrespectful. It can be very dismissive, right? Because you don't need people, right? If that's your thing, then
Well, you think you don't need people. You always need people.
Right. No, but I'm saying just having that mind.
You can only be a feminist in a first world country.
Right.
You can't be a feminist nowhere else.
Right. But I mean, because the thing is, I think a lot of women look at relationship as a codependency based on finance obligation, right? Based on financial obligation. But that's not what relationships are, right? That's not what a healthy relationship is. You know what I mean? So because of that, it's like, well, I don't need you to raise the kids, right? I don't need you to provide because, I have a good job.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I can be mom and dad at the same time, but in reality, you're hurting the kids.
You're hurting the kids big time.
Yes, you hurt. It's not so. So I think what in Haiti, even though again, I think a lot of Black countries, right, have the same similar patterns and traditions and mindset because of what we were taught during slavery, right? We have a lot of things in common, but it comes down to, well, if we have this kid together, it's our responsibility to raise the kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because that kid never asked to be here. You know what I mean? And the fact that, so I talk about this construct of, having this manual, right? Everything that's created, is created with a manual, with an instruction manual, right? And when you think about children, our manual is our parents. You know what I'm saying? So when you miss out on, one part of that manual, you miss out on what you were supposed to receive from, either a dad or a mom. You know what I'm saying? So and because of that, I'm not saying you're not going to be a healthy, well-rounded person, but you missing, part of the teaching that you were created to have. You know what I mean? So when somebody says, well, I don't need somebody to raise children, to me, I think that's very selfish, towards the children, and it's unfair. So I'll let you say something, Jin. So to go back to your question about how women treat men in Haiti versus here, I think I would definitely say women were definitely more understanding of what healthy relationships should be. Again, because it wasn't, only based on financial obligation. You know what I mean? It's like I needed to have a relationship because, well, I mean, that we were created to have relationships with one another. But here, and I don't want to generalize it, but I've seen a lot of unhealthy relationships, and I've seen some healthy relationships as well.
Go ahead, Jim.
I want to provide some context. Mark made a really important point when you said that our parents are the manual, for like who we're to become and what we are to learn. And so if you look at single parent households, right, on average, by the time a kid is a Black boy is like 5 years old, his mother has spoken like 1/4 to 1/3 of the words to him that they traditionally speak to their daughters. And this leads to so when people talk about Black boys being delayed in education, That is the foundation of it. The lack of communication through their formative years from their mother. The mother doesn't talk to them the way they talk to the daughters. And so this kid goes into school delayed, stays delayed. I used to date a woman who was a superintendent of a charter school system. And she told me, and so she was connected on a national level in the education system. And she told me, she said, the education system, they will never say it publicly, but in private meetings, they've thrown their hands up. They don't know what to do with Black boys. They don't know how to get Black boys, up to speed. But studies also show that Black boys who are raised by men, all the discrepancies in performance and education and even professionally disappear. When Black boys, and this is a controversial one that would make a lot of people upset, but when Black boys are raised by white women, it's the same thing. When Black boys are raised by anyone but Black women, those gaps are closed. So if you don't have a father in the home communicating to the boy, then it's almost impossible for him to keep pace with his peers across social lines. And that's not my opinion. That has been proven in studies.
Right. And it sounds like to me that the nurturing styles are different. It's like the boys get the structure from the fathers, but the study or the white women that you talk about, Gene, it seems like to me that their nurturing might be a little different than the nurturing that some of our women are giving our kids.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
No, the hypothesis in the study was that the resentment that Black women feel towards Black men is handed down to their sons. So the way that they interact with their sons is with his hostility that they feel towards Black men, whereas a white woman or someone else doesn't have that hostility. One of the things they also pointed out was that socially it's going to be a different experience for that Black boy, because if his father or his, there's, the angry Black woman stereotype or whatever, with his father or his white mother goes to school and has to interact with people, they're going to get more support,
right,
more often than not, than the Black woman. If they can find any type of stereotypical behavior in her, they're not going to support her in her efforts to educate her child the way the father or the white mother or Latina mother, whatever, is going to be supported.
Yeah, so let me just add to that. I think when we look at single parenthood, right? No one chooses to be a single parent, unless
Some people do, Mark. Some people do.
Let me tell you, let me just clarify that. Some people do so let's say you don't have a partner, right? You choose to be impregnated, to have a child. That's different. But if you were dating someone, right? If you were hanging out with someone, whatever you want to call it, you end up getting pregnant. It was not your intention to be a single parent.
I know
right?
what you're saying.
So when it comes to men or women, so now let's say you have a child with a guy who had no intention of being in a relationship with you, or even not knowing how to raise a child, right? Because a lot of boys, a lot of girls, they still working on raising themselves, right? So now let's say you have a child. Let's talk about women. Let's say you have a child, by a guy who has no idea how to be a dad, right? Who has no idea how to be a man. So now you're gonna be disappointed when that guy says, I'm not ready to be a dad. I'm not ready to be a father, right? And the girl says, well, I'm not getting rid of that kid, right? So now that creates anger and pain. You know what I mean? So now you're gonna raise that kid without that guy. You know what I mean? And that angry spirit or hurtful spirit. So now whatever you feeling, that's gonna be projected onto the kid. It may not be intentional, right? But that's the spirit you're gonna raise that kid in. You know what I mean? So I think, speaking from the book, having a child is such a huge responsibility. It is such a huge, task to take on, to just, nonchalantly say, I'm going to have a kid and that kid is going to be fine. That is not true. You know what I'm saying? So when you talk about a black mother, their interaction with that kid is negative. I can understand that. You know what I mean? Because the thing is, when a lot of black women or black mothers, especially young ones, they're hurting when they get pregnant by a guy and the guy is no longer around. You know what I'm saying? And that hurt doesn't just get up and disappear. So,
Yeah.
because of that hurt towards that guy, that never, that was never really taught how to be responsible, right? So now you're gonna take that frustration out on the child, especially if it's a boy,
Yeah. And
right?
that's what happens.
Right, because that boy is gonna be a reminder of the guy who was, irresponsible.
Right.
Yeah, one of the
Right.
things that was very common in the black community, and you could across the country, you could hear this: women saying to their sons, "You're just like your no good daddy."
That's the same thing in Haiti too. That
Just like your
it's,
no good
it's,
daddy.
right. It's not just America. That's
Okay,
I think
well, I
that's
can't.
in most, yeah, that's in most black countries. Where
Just like your
again,
no good daddy.
that's because of the resentment and the anger and the hurt, right?
Yeah,
That was left from not having that dad around, or from that dad not being the man that she wanted him to be. Here's the kicker. So now you raising that boy, right? You actually raising that boy to be that same guy
that
who
his father
couldn't,
was.
right, that couldn't be, the guy that you wanted him to be. So now
Yeah,
he's gonna be that same guy to another girl, right? So now when I hear young women, especially complaining and talking about, how men, ain't this, men and that, but they're not raising themselves. Right, women, it's sad to say, but women are raising those boys.
they're raising the men they resent.
Right. So like when you raise any kid, any child in pain and anger, like you raising that child to be broken and hurt. You know what I'm saying? So and again, so you raising that kid to be a version of yourself. So that there's no way that boy or man is gonna be able to have a healthy relationship when all he knew was an angry and bitter and you know, uh, unhealthy woman. You know what I'm saying? So now he's either gonna find somebody who's just like you, or he's gonna hate the fact that you were the way you are, and he's gonna try to create another relationship that was completely different from what he had with you, which will also be confusing because he will not know how to have a healthy relationship because of how you raised them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So either way, it's just not beneficial to a child to grow up, you know, with an hurting parent, with an angry parent, or without having both, sides of that manual. You know what I mean?
I've seen
Right.
both. I've seen both boys and girls who resented who the parent of the opposite sex was,
Yeah,
but could not stay away from people just like them.
that's what they know.
Can't stay away from emotionally unavailable men.
Right.
You know, guys who can't stay away from emasculating women. They despise the way their parents were,
Right.
but they gravitate only to people who mimic that same behavior.
Right. No, it's funny. Like when when you read the book, so what I had, I had people writing letters, right, from their childhood. So I think one of the guys who actually wrote a letter, he said he had both parents growing up, but he had no love in the way that his mom and dad interact with one another, and he vowed not to ever marry a woman like his mother. But he ended up marrying a woman like his mother. I mean, he got divorced. He got divorced 10 years later, but he ended up marrying a woman just like his mother because he was looking for something that he didn't know. You know what I mean? So if you don't know what you're looking for, you're gonna end up settling for what what you're not looking for.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So because of that, he didn't know any other type of women but the woman he grew up with. You know what I'm saying? So it's no surprise that when somebody like a woman will be will hate her dad, but she's gonna end up with another guy who's just like her dad, right? A boy, a man will despise his mom. He's still gonna love his mother, but the way that his mom was, he's not gonna want to have a woman who was just like his mom.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But because of that, he's going to end up with a woman who he has no idea who she is because, well, there's no familiarity. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? And
Right.
and I think, to make one last point, when they used to have, arranged marriage, right? It was because, before it became about money, it was because, well, I know what values, our family have, right? I'm going to look for a girl from a family who has the same values as us. You know what I'm saying? But now when you just despite, you just hate the values that you grew up with. Now you're going to try, you're trying to find other values that you have no idea about. You know what I mean? So that's just going to create confusion and you're just never really going to know what you're going to end up with.
True.
Mark, let me ask you this question because I know you have to go, and I have to go in a few minutes too. And Gene, thank you for being part of this timely discussion. If the sons are more or less, how can I say it? If the sons are defeated, why are the daughters broken? Why are the daughters
Great question.
broken?
So all right. So again, I'm going to take it back to childhood. So a lot of daughters are broken. Let's say, again, a lot of kids, Black kids, are being raised by their mothers, right? So for a girl, your first love is your dad,
Right.
right? No question. So now imagine as a girl, you're growing up, you don't have your dad around. That's brokenhearted,
Right.
right? Imagine as a girl, you have your dad, but your mom is disappointed in your dad, and that becomes your perception of your dad. That's brokenhearted. You know what I'm saying? So now you have all these things as a girl that you have to navigate through. You know what I'm saying? So now you don't understand. Well, my dad was supposed to be this man. He's not. I don't like I don't feel loved. I don't feel beautiful because my dad never made me feel beautiful. Right. So now as you get older, you become a teenager. You end up being with a defeated boy.
Right.
Right? Who
Right.
actually hurt you even more than your dad did because
Right.
he's probably just like your dad. Right? So that just create more brokenness.
Right.
And so to take it back, if you grew up with a mom who's hurting, who's angry, right? So now you have to, kind of you take on your mother's pain. Because as a daughter, your mom is your role model. Right?
Facts.
That's the woman you were supposed to grow up to be.
Right.
Now, when you see her hurting, right, so that becomes your pain. Again, that's another thing, that breaks you down. So you have all these things as a girl, first your dad, was not your first love as he was supposed to be, right? That breaks you down. Your mom is hurting, right? That breaks you down. You end up getting in relationships with other defeated, boys. That breaks you down. So now you have all this brokenness even before you end up having reasons to be broken. So now as you get older, right, all those things, all those virtues are broken inside of you. So you learning how to be strong, right? You're learning how to be strong now because because you've accumulated all those brokenness, and by the time you become an adult, it's like, well, right now I'm good. I don't need anybody.
Right.
I'm good. Right. I'm strong now.
And that goes back to the whole epigenesis of a concept.
Yeah.
More or less indoctrinated by Mark Schwartz, called internal family systems, and it more or less hinges on the concept of legacy burdens. That's part of family systems. Legacy burdens. They're burdens of where people have not more or less uncovered their parts in trauma. And because they have not uncovered their parts in trauma, they have not learned how to recover. There has to be an uncovering in order to recover, in order to move forward. You know, the Temptation made a song years ago, Mark, called Ball of Confusion. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have in America today. You know, they said it, that's what we have in the world. But we have a ball of confusion. And I don't see it getting any better because we live in a society where we're emasculating our boys and we're exonerating our women at the behest of the emasculation of our boys. Now, listen, you're from Haiti. Haiti was a vibrant culture, a culture of warriors. One of the first free countries to fall against the British and got their independence.
Right.
But I've always said, Mark, I'm gonna mess your name. I'm about to mess it up. Mark Plaisir. I got a little French though. I've always said on it, brother. I'm gonna call you Eminem. I'll take Eminem there. But I've always said, Mark, that a culture is only as strong as the warriors in that culture.
Right.
So we got broken. We got defeated. Wait, hold on. Let me look. We got defeated sons. Right. We got broken daughters, and we got a ball of confusion that does not appear to be getting any better. And what women and men don't understand is that the masculine must complement the feminine, and the feminine must complement the masculine. When you have that complement, those complementary elements, they're not polarity, but there's a melange. It's a melange of excellence. And what women don't understand, and what men don't understand, women need men to be strong, but men need women to be soft, feminine, and cooperative in order to build. When a woman is feminine, when she's soft, when she's cooperative, a man can be at his best. But unfortunately, you know, a lot of brothers come home, you know, with headaches. They sit in their cars crying. They got to do deep breathing before they come in the house. They got to chant. They got to do all of that because they're not getting the respect and the peace that they need. You know, Teddy said it's so good to love somebody and somebody to love you back, Mark.
Right.
But do you see any hope for modern relationships? I know you got to go in a few minutes, but do you see any hope for modern relationships? And if you do see hope, what is the antecedent for that hope?
You know, I do see hope. You know, when you have, you know, 'cause again, like you said, we're needed. You know, both men and women are needed, right? And I think that the biggest mistake, you know, again with the social welfare, when they try to get rid of the men, and give, you know, women control of our communities. Again, I'm not saying that because women are not, you know, able to control, to be in control. That's, you know, that's not what I'm saying. But the point is, you know, we all need each other, right? So now, when you don't have men, again, you know, we talk about that warrior spirit. There's no respect, right? If you know, and I'm sure you can see it in our communities. You know, a lot of, you know, our boys are getting you know, just preyed on because they don't respect us. You know what I mean? And partly because we don't respect ourselves, right? You know, you have a lot of boys growing up not knowing anything about being responsible, right? You know, like the whole thing is to get money. That's it. Right, they're all about getting money, and they'll do whatever it takes to get that money, but they have no sense of responsibility. They have no sense of culture and value, right? And so that just creates a weakness in our communities. You know what I mean? And now you have, again, men are being raised by women. That's not the way it was supposed to be.
Right.
You know, you're never gonna have, you know, leading men. You're never gonna have, you know, men who are actually standing up for their culture and their communities.
Right.
Right. When they don't have a sense of masculinity, they don't have a sense of leading. Right. You know what I mean? So that's never gonna happen. So I think it's important to you know, to understand that, well, it's not about, you know, who's the boss and who's doing this, who's doing that. Is that, you know, is understanding, you know what, we all need each other, right? If we're gonna get past this stage where, you know, our people are getting killed, our people are being disrespected, our people are killing each other, right? We have to understand we need men in the communities. You know, we have to start educating men. And you know, I'm in my 30s. You know, I know Gene is in his 50s. I don't know how old you are, but I think, you know, we need
Late 40s.
leaders.
Late 40s. Being the snake whisperer, he's father time.
Sounds good. You know, but we need men who are gonna take the lead, right? Who understand what it means to be leaders to help the younger generation.
No,
And
you're
then,
right.
you know, Gene has a daughter. You know, he's doing great raising his daughters. You know, giving her love, and I think that's great. You know, recipe for having healthy relationship. You know what I
Right.
mean? I have a daughter, right? I've made it my priority. You got 3 daughters, right? You know, I've made it my priority to raise my daughter to be kind, loving, you know, self-sufficient, not independent, right? And definitely not a strong woman, but to be, you know, to be sufficient, to be kind, to be loving, to be generous, you know, to be a great asset to society and to herself. You know what I mean?
Mark, watch this. Watch this. And I'm sorry to cut across you, but I wanted to say this while I was on my mind.
Yeah.
Self-sufficient and independent really is the same thing. Self-sufficiency and independence is the same. But here's where the thinking error come in.
Okay.
It's one thing to say I'm going to be soft and self-sufficient until I get a man. But it's another thing to say I'm strong and independent and I don't need a man.
Okay.
Because it's okay to be self-sufficient, or it's okay to be independent until you become interdependent with your man.
Well,
but so many women come into a relationship trying to be totally independent and saying I don't need a man. That's what causes the thinking error, which is a cognitive distortion and is very irrational. You know, self-sufficient, this means I'm gonna be self-functioning until I get to the next level. Nobody's 100%, like we said earlier, nobody's 100% independent. And that's why I say it's a thinking error, because they say I don't need a man. And that's foolish, because you don't hear men going around say I don't need a woman. I need a woman. I know I need a woman. I know the snake whisperer needs a woman.
Honestly, man, they're not independent, bro. I mean, think about it. Their independence exists within the system that men built.
Right.
How are you independent? You're independent when you can remove the system and sustain your life on your own. That is the definition of independence. If you need this system to sustain your independence, then you're not independent. You may be independent of an individual, but you're interdependent on the system.
Right.
And that system was built by men.
Right.
So
that's true.
You know, I say that because it is total disrespect to men to say I don't need a man while being sustained by the system that men built.
Yes, sir. That's true.
It's comical when I hear women say this. It's like, who are you kidding? Your car, your house. Like you can't fart in the wind without needing something that some man built. Your computer, your phone. I mean, everything that you take your clothes to the dry cleaners, the supermarket, everything. Men have built it all.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
You don't need men.
Yeah, that you know, I think again, it's just a mindset, right?
It's a delusional mindset, though. It's not rooted in reality, bro. Reality is very different.
Yeah, it's definitely not a healthy mindset. And the thing is, you know, we also have to understand, you know, men are being raised to need women, right? But women are being raised to not need men, especially now, right? You know, because of the feminist movement. It's like, well, you know, you were telling girls that you are independent and strong, little girls, right? You know, and the thing is, you know, I get that. You know, so one thing also I talk about in the book, you know, the way boys were raised with the mindset of superiority, that was also wrong. That was hurtful. You know what I mean? Like the way, you know, women used to be treated, that was also wrong. You know what I mean? We have to acknowledge that. You know, we have to acknowledge that a lot of women went
about abusive behavior.
Right. You know, we're talking about a lot of, you know, just negative behaviors towards women, and that, you know, that was right. That left a lot of women hurting, and now, right. You know what I mean? So now it's almost like we have in this reciprocity where, you know, women are learning to be what men used to be to women.
It's actually an overcompensation.
Right. You know, but that's gonna create more hurt amongst ourselves. Right, that's gonna create more. So, like when you're raising little girls to not need, you know, men, or to not need boys or whatever, now you teaching them to be hurt. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a really bad approach to doing it. And I think eventually it's gonna create a lot more disconnect between men and women, unless again we have people who are healthy enough to raise those kids to understand that you have to have boundaries. You have to be you have to be healthy enough to have healthy interactions with other people with the opposite sex. You know what I mean? So again, I think we definitely need one another. We definitely have to understand the importance of having healthy relationship, healthy family dynamics. Otherwise, we're just gonna keep going down this path where we all gonna just keep complaining about the men are not good, women are not good, women are not doing this, women are not, and men are not doing that, and that's not gonna change anything. You know what I mean? Until we both get to the point where we honest with ourselves and understand, what, as parents, we're going to raise our children to understand one another, right? So we're going to raise our daughters to understand boys. We're going to raise our boys to understand, girls. We're going to raise each other to protect one another, right? The way that we were supposed to. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
so I think that there's accounts to be held on both parts. I get that because of modern civilizations and feminism, the teaching is going downhill because again it's partly because of how the dynamic was back then. You know what I mean? But to not understanding that needing other people is just part of life, you're actually hurting yourself.
Let me say this, and I like what the brother said a minute ago. I think what guys are saying is that at the macro level, Mark, black men never had the power to oppress women. We never had that. We didn't create policies and laws to oppress black women. Now, listen, domestic issues are endemic to all ethnic groups, whether you're Asian, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Italian. That's just normal. That's the norm. So to castigate a whole, like Peter Frank said, to castigate a whole, or to castigate black men as being these great oppressors, it's not only unfair, but it's very disingenuous. Right. Because we were mused. I always said that black men and black women were mused of the same cause. We were in the struggle together, and black men got the greatest brunt of it. So in 1965, with policies by the Lyndon B. Johnson administration, that's where the great betrayal came. Mm-hmm. And we've been going downhill ever since. There's an old saying that says, their problems are not our problems. And the problems that we were having in our families were not endemic to some of the problems that a lot of black women or white women were having with their own men. Because black men didn't have the power to create policies. We didn't create any policies. Yeah, we were all struggling together. We were working together. That's why we were making progress. We were on an upward trend in 1965. We were growing. Right. But around 1972, right after Lyndon B. Johnson administration, I think 27% of children were born out of wedlock. And it's damn near mushroom now. It's mushroom to some on our astronomical level.
It's 78% right now.
It might be higher than that, Gene.
Yeah, no, the last I checked, it was 78%. Okay, but the thing is this, is that it's important to note that black women have never lived with black men in this country in a patriarchal society where black men are. So all the negative aspects of quote unquote patriarchy that women are railing against around the world, black women don't know anything about that.
That's true. You're right. That's
black men at all. Right. Like zero. It's never happened. Doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think to make a final point, what you said about black men, being held accountable for what we didn't create. So I talk about in the book how we both went through the gruesome experience of slavery, right? We were both hurt. You know what I mean? So I think now to punish the people who were in the same situations with you, who are going through it with you, right?
Let me stop you there real quick. Let me interject in that real quick, because the equality of that is a misnomer. Like, people always say that as though we all went through the same stuff, but black women were not imported to this country until 60 years before the Civil War. For the first couple of hundred years, it was just black men coming over here. There were no black women coming over here. Right. So like that through it all. They held us down, and they were right by us. They weren't even here, and they were still in Africa. They were not here. But
Right.
people, that's a
right.
false equivalency that does not exist.
No, but here's my point though. Nonetheless, they were still part of it, right? Whether they
before the Civil War they became part of it, but not before that.
But Jim, what I'm saying is, whether they had their sons stolen from them in Africa, their partners stolen from them from Africa, whether when they came here 100 years later, they were still experiencing that experience of slavery, right? We went through it together. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't deny the fact that whether, they went through it for 300 years or, 200 years, you know what I mean? That was still enough time to get broken together.
Right.
That was still enough time for both of us to feel hurt by that experience. You know what I mean? So now feeling like we have to, judge, not necessarily judge, but to put the blame on the other person, you know what I mean? To say, well, black men are doing this to black women. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't bring us to a healthy place. You know what I'm saying?
Not true. Yeah, I mean both. It's not true, and it doesn't bring us to a healthy place.
So what I talked about in the book is to understand that we both went through it, right? The system that was created to keep us apart was not created by us. You know what I mean? Like, we can't be blamed for that system. And every time we allow that system to keep us apart, we hurting ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Every time we create a narrative where we're hurting one another, we're hurting ourselves. We're hurting our communities. We're hurting, our future. This leading in the world. You know what I'm saying?
But you know what, Mark? I'll say this, man, and I know you got to go, and I got to go in a minute. And listen, to all that are watching and listening, I'm honored to have you guys watching this show, The Kosher Clinician. It takes a lot of time creating these shows and bringing on distinguished guests like Mark Plaisir. I know I'm killing that.
That was good.
And my homeboy Gene Davis, the antagonist, the snake whisperer. But but listen, guys, the guys that are listening, please support this platform. I'm a clinical therapist, and so I take a lot of my own personal time to do this. I'm taking a risk doing this stuff because I'm the real deal. I'm a real licensed clinical therapist. So please support Cash Out 7 Smalls. Please support the platform so I can continue to get this platform to grow. Please Cash Out 7 Smalls because this equipment is very expensive, almost $4,000 worth. But I do it for the love of the brotherhood, man. I do it for the love of the brotherhood, and especially young men like Petaway Boy and a lot of these other young men that need the guidance of other masculine men. Because you guys don't get it from your mothers, you don't get it from your community. So I count on an honor to serve you guys. So real quick, Mark, go ahead and say what you were saying, brother, because you're bringing forth some good points, and Gene is bringing forth some good points too.
And tell us where we can get the book, Mark.
Absolutely. So you can get the book on my website, healingvibes.org. You can order your signed copy. You can get it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, BalboaPress.com, eBay, everywhere books are sold, really. So again, I know I got to run. I'm so glad to be here with you, fellas. Thank you for having me. Again, to make a final point, we, both black men and black women are hurting, right? There's no doubt about that. We hurt one another. We're hurting each other. Right, we're both hurting, and the most important thing to do right now is to come together, to heal together, and raise our children to be healthier, so they don't have to repeat what we went through.
Right.
All right. So thank you so much, guys.
I know you got to go, Mark. I know you got to go. What did you get out of this show? Because I got to go too. But what did you get out of this show? And I don't think the black women can, until they can respect masculine authority, they can never respect black men. But what did you get out of the show, real quick? And I'm gonna let you go. I have to go as well.
Yeah, definitely a great conversation. Definitely, I think it's important, what I learned from the show, the importance of having, healthy relationships, right? The importance of, having mutual respect for one another, and, not allowing, a system that was created to divide us to stay, to keep dividing us. Now that we're learning to understand how that system, how it was created, why it was created, and the impact that it has on our communities, on our children. So I think it's very, again, important to have these type of conversations, to have these type of interactions, just so we can learn from one another, just so we can listen to one another. I'd love to be back to, have some women on the show.
Yes.
Just so we can have,
right.
a different type of, perspective. I think that's, that's definitely gonna be helpful, just to get their point of views. And
well, we can do that if you can bring them. Let's do it. We can do it.
No, for sure. Just to understand that we're not here to hurt one another. We're here to build, to grow together, to help each other, and to heal with one another.
And I'm gonna bring the snake whisperer back, because
I want to say something real quick.
He don't have a filter.
Hey, Mark knows that. Mark is no stranger to me. He knows me very well.
I know.
To your point, Mark, what I got out of this whole thing, in the back of my mind the whole time, what I've been thinking about, because I watched the tribunals with Rwanda and with Angola and with South Africa. And so what they did, the way that they got past their sordid history, was to have these tribunals, and people had to be completely honest, like, full accountability. Like, here in this country, there's so much deflecting, and people don't, and that blew me away. And I saw those things years ago. So way back then, they were further ahead than we are now in taking accountability for what happened. Not to point fingers at people, but people taking accountability for their part. And until we can do that, I don't really know how we can move forward. So at some point, we have to do that. We have to take accountability for our part in this mess.
Absolutely. No, without accountability, there's no healing. There's no growth. You have to take accountability. I totally agree.
Well, listen, it's been an honor, and once again, we're bringing you the distinguished author, Mark Plaisir.
Plaisir.
And go check out his book. You got to get this book. Go check out his book. Yeah. And so, Gene, once again, thank you, sir. I always like bringing you on, because I know you're gonna be the agitator. So you're like, because Gene ain't gonna hold no. Me and Gene, Gene and I have gotten into it a couple times, but he's still my homie.
He's every bit as smooth as his name sounds.
the chocolate eel. What you call him? The chocolate eel. That's what I'm gonna call Mark.
Listen, fellas, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, man. I gotta run.
Too. All right, Gene. Thanks, Mark. Let's do it again. All right, Gene. Be good, brother. All right, guys. We're about to sign off, and once again, thank you for enjoying the show. I'm the Culture Clinician, and we're about to sign. Fate is before you. Choose wisely.